Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Thursday, December 1st, and I hope you all are having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we will head over to Allen, where he sits down with Mohan Kampela, Vice President of Product Marketing at Big Panda, to talk about why larger companies should consider things such as potential revenue or risk, the number of people who could be impacted, and the possibility of associated fees, penalties, or litigations for IT outages. Allen will then speak with Roy Dagan, co-founder and CEO of SecurityThings, to talk about the historical misalignment of IT and operations teams responsible for physical devices in the enterprise. Then we go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con North America, where Allen spoke with Karan Kamiti, CEO of DeepFactor, to discuss the company's goal of incorporating security into software development lifecycles. Also at KubeCon Cloud Native Con, Allen spoke with Asanka Abasinghe, Chief Technology Evangelist at WSO2, to discuss the company's three areas of expertise: API management, security integration, and identity access management. Next up, we are airing episode 3 of our series, Engineering the Change. This series will follow the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on to tell us more about some of our upcoming webinars. Then, Mitch speaks with Martin Mao, co-founder and CEO at Chronosphere, to talk about how observability can bring new insights into cloud-native applications, observability-driven development, and resiliency through break testing, and more. We will then wrap up this broadcast with 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike Vizard interviews Matt Richards, Chief Marketing Officer for Aqua Security, as Matt explains how eBPF and Linux kernel will advance the state of cloud-native cybersecurity. Then, Mike interviews LeanIX CEO Andre Christ, as Andre explains the critical role enterprise architects and DevOps engineers need to play to reduce cloud computing costs. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
Do you know what you want?
Can we afford this place?
I'm thinking a 1,000-piece Kubernetes, cloud workload protection, and XDR combo.
Yeah, I actually don't see any prices.
Hello, how can I schedule a demo for you today?
So we're on a budget.
Okay.
How much is your 1,000-piece Kubernetes?
What solutions are you currently evaluating?
You don't have to order off that thing.
We don't?
How did you get in here? Check this out.
Optic's secret dollar menu.
Order today and you can secure any combo of cloud and endpoint assets through the end of next year. All for $1.
What if I want to secure 100 Mac laptops and 900 Linux servers?
Yeah, $1. What if I want 500 laptops and 500 Kubernetes nodes? Just $1? Yep, mix and match to create the combo that works for you.
What about customer support?
Yep, everything for just $1. We're gonna order off the Uptick secret dollar menu. And seriously, how did you get in here?
Seriously.
Try the Uptick's combo of CNAP and XDR, delivered in a single UI and data model. Just $1 to secure your cloud, containers, and laptops through the end of next year. Offer ends December 31st.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for December 1st. First up, Twitter announced it will stop enforcing its COVID misinformation policy. The company said it stopped taking action against tweets that breached the previously held COVID rules yesterday. Under the misinformation policy, Twitter used a 5-strike system for misinformation, with the account being suspended indefinitely after the 5th strike. While the system was never perfect, it did suspend over 11,000 accounts for COVID misinformation. Now, however, some of these accounts that broke the rules are returning, causing concerns that these accounts could provide misinformation that could influence how people make health decisions. Next, Google was sued by several British publishers on the basis that Google abused their dominant position in online advertising. The claim was filed yesterday at the Competition Appeal Tribunal. According to economic research done for the lawsuit, Google may have reduced ad revenue for companies by up to 40%, with an estimated loss of $16 billion since 2014. Zooming out, online advertising has begun to be heavily scrutinized by regulators worldwide, as was the case earlier this year with the $150 million euro fine imposed on Google from France. This claim itself is acting in conjunction with an EU claim that is expected to be filed next year. In other news, DoorDash has joined the ranks of companies laying off workers by announcing that they are laying off 1,250 employees themselves. This being said, the company has not yet made it clear which departments the layoffs are hitting the most. DoorDash has attributed the layoffs to growing the company too quickly during the pandemic, with it now facing operating costs that would quickly rise above its revenue. While DoorDash has seen success during the pandemic, it is not immune from the current economic environment. The workers that have been laid off will receive 17 weeks of compensation as well as their February 2023 stock vest. Next up, the plane maker Airbus has teamed up with the car maker Renault to create the next generation of electric batteries. Both of the companies will work together to create batteries for cars and planes with increased energy storage. Energy storage is one of the major factors holding back long-range EVs currently. The two companies have said that they will work on energy management optimization, as well as looking at the full life cycle of batteries to determine their future carbon footprints. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at how Datadog has made a universal monitoring service generally available. The service takes advantage of the extended Berkeley packet filtering microkernel to automatically detect all the services that make up an application environment. Datadog has said that the goal is to close the visibility gap that has emerged in IT organizations as they use specific application services. To learn more, go to DevOps.com. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at how to adapt to tightening security budgets. This article looks at what's worrying security teams, putting risk into context, and the tools paradox. To learn more, go to SecurityBoulevard.com. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article looking at how Kubescape has added a new functionality to help scan for vulnerabilities. With this new functionality, developers will be able to identify vulnerabilities earlier in the development process, and the vulnerabilities can be solved before it reaches production. To learn more, go to ContainerJournal.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
Coding is changing the world, making a difference in the world.
We take anyone, any adult, and help them become the best version of themselves and become a software engineer.
At Techstrong Group, we've undertaken to meet this challenge with our Engineering the Change Scholarship.
My career is completely changed to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Full $10,000 scholarship to one winner to attend the intense software development course at Boca Code.
I was just ready to be a software engineer.
So Donald is another story.
Right now it's kind of like, I don't know.
Honestly, starting to scare me a little bit.
Roller coaster of understanding something one moment and then feeling lost the next.
If you change the capitalization of a file name, you are going to your whole project.
At the end of it, you're gonna be a really good family.
We call Stephanie like the silent ninja. As much as he's struggling, Donald really, really wants this.
My house burned down twice.
The biggest thing I'm struggling with definitely is time.
That's pretty cool that I've been able to expand my mind to be able to accept different ways of doing something.
My only option is to succeed.
Boca Code, how we do it?
Highs definitely getting started. Lows would be Diary's jokes.
We told all of them that this is the hardest thing they would have to go through.
All of our graduates are absolute stars.
Boca Code!
Who will graduate and become a software engineer?
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. Our next guest today is Mohan Kampela. Mohan is the VP of Product Marketing at Big Panda. I know many of you probably know Big Panda, but we're going to get, if you don't, not to worry, we're going to explain that to you. But first, let's welcome Mohan. Mohan, welcome to Techstrong. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me this morning.
A pleasure to have you on. So, Mohan, before we jump into who Big Panda is, let's jump into who is Mohan. Give people a sense of kind of your career, your story.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I kind of got my start in IT, enterprise IT, almost 20 years ago as a consultant. I guess today you would call that customer success. So over the years, I've had a variety of consulting, pre-sales engineering, technical marketing roles, and somewhat stayed in the IT operations domain, which is also where Big Panda plays in. So yeah, I've really seen the landscape in the space evolve over the last 20 years.
You know what they say, the days are long, but the years are short. And when you look back over that, it doesn't seem as long, but when you look day to day, the changes, they really are. I mean, 100%. Think about what it was 20 years ago, right? You didn't have cloud, you didn't have so much of what cloud native, so much of what we take for granted today. Anyway, you mentioned Big Panda plays in the IT operations, IT ops space. But why don't we dig in a little deeper than that? Tell us about Big Panda, Mohan.
Yeah, happy to. So, like I said, I've been in this space for a long time, and it's one of those funny things where, some of the tools that were used 20 years ago, the promise of IT operations never really came to fruition. And that's what Big Panda fixes. I think for the first time, companies that use Big Panda's AI Ops platform, are able to finally reduce the frequency, the duration, and the impact of IT incidents and outages. You could also say in some ways that we help prevent outages. And then if there is an outage, we help you resolve it very quickly using the power of AI and machine learning.
Excellent. We hear so much today about AI and ML and, what's the difference and is it real, is it not real? My feeling is that in some areas there is a lot of hype and there's more hype than reality. But in certain instances, in certain use cases, whether you want to call it AI or ML, right? I'm not going to argue that's like a religious war. I'm not getting into politics and religion. But in certain use cases, it really works and really helps. The AI ops use case is one of those. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, no, great question. I think like everything else in technology, you generally have the hype cycle, you have the valley of disappointment and all of that stuff, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But I do think that
the trough of disillusionment is that's what Gartner calls it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like, especially in IT operations in the last 7 years specifically, the promise of AI has actually started to be borne out. And you said, why is that? I think the technology, for AI to work, you need large data sets, you need real-time processing power, and you need pragmatic results, right? Not smoke and mirrors, but pragmatic results. And I feel like all three things, that confluence of these three things has happened in the last 7 years. And I don't think there's any looking back now.
Excellent. I don't believe so either. Not only that, we had a previous guest was from ServiceNow on, and we were talking, and the whole ML thing came up there as well. And given current macroeconomic conditions, what's going on, even in the tech world, which has been immune from macroeconomic conditions for probably 10, 12 years, people are going to have to do more with less in terms of people, right? And budgets and stuff. So in order to do that, there is no going back. The job's not going to get smaller. We're not going to shrink our infrastructures and stuff. We're going to need to rely more on technologies like ML and AI and automation to allow us to get the jobs done here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think, to your earlier point, the tech industry has been somewhat of a Teflon industry, right? Mm-hmm. The economic conditions have been completely divorced from the tech growth curve. But I do think that, finally in 2022, there's definitely been a reckoning, and I'm sure you're seeing that going on. Sure. And I do think that, especially when we talk to our prospects and customers, I think what gets them really excited is how AI or AI ops and automation can help them weather this storm, right? It really comes down to how can AI help their teams do more with the existing headcount? How do they help them get more or squeeze more juice out of their existing tools? And how do they optimize efficiencies and cut costs, not just headcount, right? But in all the other areas, there's inefficiencies and things like that. How can AI and ML help them optimize and automate and all of that stuff? So we see a lot of interest in that. And I do think that we have this unique ability to help move the needle there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before we even jump into this report that we want to talk about, for people who want to get more information about Big Panda, Mohan, is it bigpanda.io? I forget now.
It is bigpanda.io, Alan. Yeah, you're right.
Yes. Okay, so just want to send people that out there right off the bat. All right, let's jump into really what we were going to talk about today before we went down that fork there, which is Big Panda's recently released a new report and around outages and so forth. Mo, if you can share with our audience.
Yeah, happy to. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So I talked earlier, Alan, maybe 5 minutes ago, I guess, how Big Panda is really in the business of preventing and resolving outages, IT outages, right? And I think there's various other vendors that also do something similar, but every vendor has a different take on it. But one of the fundamental inputs to that process, one of the fundamental ways in which you can measure, track, and communicate the value of preventing and resolving outages, that metric is really, what is the cost of an outage? Now, you're going to be shocked to hear that while that is such a fundamental input, the last known statistic that's been used in the industry is all the way back from 2014, right? Which in tech is pretty much a lifetime, right? It's like dog years. Like tech years are like dog years. So imagine this is one random statistic that's floating around from a blog post from all the way from 2014, and that's been used and abused to justify investments in tools, teams, headcount, growth, budgets, and so on and so forth. So anyway, long story short, we, given our ringside view into the IT ops, AI ops space, thought it was high time that we fixed that. So we commissioned a research firm called EMA Research to go survey a couple of hundred IT and IT ops execs to find out what is the state of the union when it comes to the cost of an outage. And we found a few things. The first thing we found was this old outdated stat was that the cost of downtime was $5,600 a minute. And we found that in 2022, no surprise, I guess, is that number is more than double this old dated stat. So the cost of an outage, cost of downtime is on average, and we can get into more detail if we have time, but is almost $13,000 a minute.
Wow.
So what the
crazy a minute.
Yeah, a minute, right? So now the next thing is then you're probably wondering, all right, that's on a per minute basis. But does an outage really last a minute? Does it last 5 minutes? Does it last an hour? So that's the next thing we found was on average, and we surveyed companies with employees between 1,000 employees and all the way to like over 20,000, right? So there are multiple groups of companies we surveyed. On average, for these companies, an outage lasts anywhere between an hour and 2 hours. And here's the thing.
Holy shit.
Yeah. If you think that an outage is just 1 hour, at that number I gave you, the cost of an outage for an hour is almost $1.5 million. And I'll say the last thing before I pause is, now it's 1.5 million, and pretty much every company said they have one major outage a month. To keep the math simple, let's assume it's not 12 outages a year, but let's just say it's 10 outages a year. 10 times 1.5 is 15 million. So every company out there with between that has like between 1,000 employees and 20,000 employees or more is incurring at least $15 million in wholly avoidable outage costs.
Crazy. I'll be honest with you. I don't remember what the numbers were in 2014 off the top of my head. I do remember the Ponemon Institute, Dr. Larry Ponemon. He used to do these kinds of things, but it was more for security incidents, right? What did the average security incident cost? But that's pretty much in line. I don't even know if it's gotten more expensive, Mo, and I think it's always been that expensive.
That's a great point. I think it has been, but there's been no scientific, obviously you mentioned the Ponemon Institute, right? Obviously they've done some work, but in general, it's kind of weird to me that there's not been more research done by others. Hopefully now, we have something, again, you mentioned the bigpanda.io website, so anyone that's listening or watching can go download the full report. But yeah, we've broken it down by size of the company, size of the team, frequency of outages. Again, I gave you the average, the headline number, but there's a lot of variation there too, based on who you are. So we're hoping that this is really useful for a lot of companies to help with budget planning. And, one of the things, again, I think I'm fond of my own voice, so I'll say one more thing and pause. But one of the things that IT operations teams struggle is to communicate their value to management. And I think this report has a lot of good data that they can actually use to do that. And finally, stop being the unsung heroes of IT ops and be the recognized heroes of IT operations.
I think there's a marketing campaign in there somewhere, right? Stop being the unsung heroes.
Yeah.
And be the real heroes.
Mohan, I can't help but think, $1.5 million an hour, right? That's it's a lot of money by anybody's mark. Again, analogizing I was in security for 25 years, so everything, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Everything I take back to security. Well, in security, when faced with those kinds of numbers, faced with those kinds of outcomes, it's about risk management. Right? And in managing that risk, you could say, well, look, I can try to prevent those outages from happening. And that, I don't know, my gut tells me we could do a little better in preventing outages, but they're going to happen. I think in terms of managing risk, the amount of money you would have to put in to just totally prevent outages from happening may reach a point of diminishing returns to outages happening. And then, the flip side of the equation is the response, right? How do I minimize once I have an outage, right? There's a big difference between a 5-minute outage and a 1-hour outage. So how do I bring that average outage number down? And an easy answer you can give me is use Big Panda. But let's dive in a little bit beyond that. What do you do? Do we make a bet to try to do less outages, or do we put all our money into minimizing the outages when they happen, or a little of both?
Yeah, I think you got to do both, right? I mean, there's one of the ways we think of it is a lot of times outages have these early warning signs that are given out. And if you do a good job in catching those early warning signs, then you can prevent those outages. We say Big Panda helps you detect an incident in real time before it escalates into a crippling outage. So that's one. But you're spot on, right? You can't really do it for all the outages out there. That's just unrealistic, impossible. I would laugh at anyone who claims they can 100% prevent outages. The second part is, all right, now you have an outage. What do you do? And I think that's where a couple of things come in. The first thing is, it's like when you go to the ER, right? Your triage nurse quickly looks at you for 5 minutes, takes your temperature, maybe your blood pressure, whatever, and then decides what to do. And that's like one of the fundamental things that we can do to help accelerate the incident or the outage triage process. So we route it to the right specialist for immediate deep dive investigation, etc. That's one way you can reduce the duration. The other thing you can do is A lot of our customers tell us that they get stuck in these endless bridge calls. I think they call them these bridge calls from hell. So there's a problem, there's an outage. You have 20 people join a Slack room or actually a phone call, and they're all trying to say, who caused it, whose team caused it. And that's something else that we can eliminate by surfacing something called the probable root cause. These teams don't need to be stuck on a 3-hour call. And by giving them what likely broke or caused it, by surfacing the probable root cause, we can drastically condense the duration of the outage. And the last thing we do is, once you know what's broken, teams often struggle to manually go fix something, right? The cliche is rebooting the server. But there's other things that they do manually that take a long time that prolong the outage. If we can automate that, and Big Panda helps you do that, then we can also, again, cut precious minutes off the duration of the outage.
Absolutely, and look, minutes are money, right? It's a very easy. That's the easiest part of the equation here.
100%. Yeah, I mean that whole cliche, the time is money applies in spades to outages for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, Mohan, we're just about out of time, but I want to re-emphasize to people they could get the report at bigpanda.io. You could download the report from there and dive in, because you gave us a really great overview, but there are layers here.
There are multiple layers. It's a very detailed report, a lot of really good data. Highly encourage your listeners and viewers to check it out.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling us, hey, don't be a stranger, come back.
Keep us posted on what's happening.
Yeah, that was always fun. You make it look so easy, so thank you.
No, it's not. I make it look easy by letting you talk. I do less work.
Anyway.
Be well. Good luck to you. Happy holidays. We'll be in touch.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Mohan Capella.
Big Panda here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong. We'll be back in a moment with another guest.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. Our next guest has been on here before. It's Roy Dagan. Roy is the co-founder and CEO of Security Things, and maybe you don't know Security Things, and we're going to find out more about them in a second. Roy, welcome back. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me over here again, Alan. How are you?
A pleasure to have you on. So, Roy, as I mentioned, not everyone in our audience may be familiar with Security Things, so I'm going to ask you to kind of level set for us here what the company's about. And look, you're the co-founder CEO. Let's hear a little bit about your background and why you felt so passionate to co-found this company.
Sure. So my background is many years in the tech industry. Before that, also in one of the intelligence units in the Israeli Defense Forces. What I did my entire career before started Security Things was product management. So I was a product manager. I led teams of product managers, different companies, including RSA, Nice Systems, and some other companies. And then when we started Security Things, initially we were trying to focus on the cybersecurity challenge of IoT devices, kind of at large. And then we saw the more we were speaking with with end customers and also system integrators, we saw that enterprises have a huge challenge today managing devices such as physical security devices. So if you look at an enterprise today, they may have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of devices, such as cameras, access control systems, intercoms, shooter detection, many devices that these teams are responsible for. And they come in various types, various versions, firm versions, models, and it's a pretty complex environment. At the same time, by the way, these teams are not responsible for the network, right? So they're responsible for the devices. They're the experts of the devices. They're the technology experts of these devices. But when it comes to the network, typically IT, networking team, somebody else owns the network. And we saw that things that for us were kind of trivial, coming from the IT and cyber background, thinking about how you monitor IT systems, how you maintain, upgrade, all these these things were trivial for us. But then when we were looking at these teams, and specifically in the realm of physical security, we saw that it's pretty much impossible. There's no, I'd say there's no equivalent IT system to manage these devices. So that's exactly what we decided back then that we're going to do. So we kind of built the ultimate IT system, but for physical security teams. In the future, we'll also expand to additional operational teams. And the system helps them automatically manage these devices. So many things that they're doing today, mostly reactively, or in the better case, maybe manually. But, manually means once in a while. We basically automate it all for them.
It's a great description. Roy, I think what makes it hard, and you touched on it right in the beginning, is there's such a variety of things that are connected today. You have legacy stuff that really wasn't, the relatively simple open shut kind of switches or stuff like that, not really made to be upgradable or even actually managed per se, right? From a security point of view, it's on or it's off, right? And then you have sort of more modern connected things that were made with more headroom, with the ability to upgrade. But with that technology also comes more risk, probably, in terms of security. And then you're right? Your knowledge and capabilities can't stop at the point where it plugs in to a network, because what goes on in that network has so much influence and say over how that device is used. You gave some great examples, cameras and stuff like that. I think more like in a hospital, for instance, right? Every single thing in a hospital today is connected, whether it's the pumping IV fluids into you, or the heart monitors, or, think about it. A good friend of mine said every hospital has 3 different networks. There's the regular IT network where they do business, AP, AR, HR, stuff like that. Then there's a separate network for all of these connected devices, right? And that's a kind of a mission critical network too, because those devices are mission critical. Even the MRI machines and all of that. And then there's yet a third network the doctors and those people use, because we can't trust them to do to behave in a secure fashion. So we got to kind of isolate them. Right? This is a tremendous. This complex. It's hard. It's hard to do this. So, and then 55 billion connected things in the next, whatever it is, 5 years or something. What do you got, rocks in your head? Why did you want to take this one on, right? Why? This is a big task.
So I think part of it is that you spoke about that 55 number, right? So many devices will be in the future. We basically saw there are already so many devices out there. We don't need to wait for the future for the new generation of connected devices which are coming out there. If you look at a modern enterprise today, and you gave some examples of in the hospital, the healthcare space, there are already so many connected devices, and we just decided to focus on one which is already there. You have a very clear stakeholder within the enterprise. You have teams, if we talk about physical security, you have teams which are responsible for those technologies. Right. They are experts. They are professionals when it comes to the technology. They know which camera they need, which access control, how to install them, how to work with their SI partners, and things like that. But when it comes to, having the basic monitoring, maintenance, things like that, they're just missing the information. So sometimes, even when they work with their IT counterparts, IT is it's used for so many years to have all those systems and data, and everything is about the data, right? For many years. And what we saw is that these teams are missing the data. So there's always also becoming kind of a language gap kind of between the teams. So there's something that we need to also bridge. So when the physical security teams wants to analyze an incident, but they need the help of the IT team, they can also come to them with the right level of data. So the IT team can quickly help them. If you're not coming with the right level of data, IT will just say, hey, guys, it's your device. It's not us. It's not the network. It's the device. The moment we saw that we started, deploying a few years ago, we started deploying the system in various environments, immediately it kind of leveled the playing field. And suddenly things which took them, which were not working in the network for maybe a couple of years, finally once the users of our system came to IT, came to the networking team with the right level of data, that's it. IT said, okay, this is all we need. Now we understand what the problem is. We can solve it tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right. So look, Secure Things is not the only organization or the only provider that is kind of focusing in on this space. What's your edge? No pun intended there. Right? What's your edge? What's the special sauce that sets you apart?
So we like the word edge in this space. So this is a huge blue ocean right now, and there is actually no one that does exactly what we do. And also the reason, for the recent round that we just announced, there's also obviously because of that and the type of customers we have and serve. But part of it is the depth of the technology and capabilities we have also on the edge, the actual edge devices. Then we have partnerships. We have partnerships with system integrators in space, but also partnerships with manufacturers. So manufacturers realize that they need to also work with us because of the type of end customers that we serve. And then also in terms of the system. So now it's really a platform. You can connect many types of devices to the platform, but also in terms of the coverage. It does, for an enterprise, it can perform so many tasks, right? From the level of monitoring to the level of upgrading devices, analyzing root cause of alerts, restarting devices, rotating passwords, and then also collaborating with other teams. So collaborating and sending automated tickets to maybe ServiceNow or Splunk or other systems within the enterprise, because we know that whoever is using our system is also working with other, with their counterparts within the enterprise, which have a bunch of other tools that they are used to work with.
Understood. You mentioned a recent round. We should really flesh that out. Tell us more.
Yeah, so we announced, I think it's about a month ago, a round from a $21 million round led by US venture partners. And again, I think they just saw, what we're working on. They saw the blue ocean. They saw the huge market opportunity. They saw the type of customers we have. And they were just bullish and wanted to join and invest in the company.
Well, congratulations. I mean, and I don't have to tell you the macroeconomic conditions are really impacting companies' abilities to raise money.
Yeah,
so to raise
thank you.
Healthy round. Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, that's indicative of something. So, Roy, as you mentioned, it's a blue ocean, right? It's a huge opportunity. It's a big market out there. What do you, and here we are coming into the end of 2022. Looking ahead, where are you going next? What's the next steps here that will help not Secure Things per se, but our audience in dealing with this particular problem or issue?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think especially in this market, budgets are not going to become bigger, right, for organizations. Definitely not. It's going to be hard to grow the headcount. And that's where we see the platform and the capabilities that we provide in enterprise. It really provides a lot when it comes to cost savings and all the automation, because the essence of the platform is really to enable you as an enterprise to automate things that you are either doing manually or you can't do today because they are so hard. So looking into also, into 2023, I think a lot of the opportunities around cost savings and helping organizations do more with the existing team that they have in place. So then the existing team can really focus more on the strategic tasks, but also at the same time, let's not forget, organizations are paying millions of dollars every year for these types of systems in their environments, right? For physical security, because it's so mission critical, it's so important for the enterprise, millions of dollars every year. So of course, they want to make sure that that investment is worthwhile for the organization. At the same time, again, the budget or the headcount isn't going to grow. So a system which can make sure that that investment is worthwhile and there are no incidents, and when you need the footage or where you need the access control working, all that, it really actually is working in real time. So that's when the system comes into play and is really helpful with kind of really, extending kind of the capabilities of the existing team with all the capabilities it provides.
Excellent. Well, we're almost out of time. For people who want to get more information on simpler things, can you give us the website and spell it if you can?
Sure. So it's www.securithings.com. So securithings.com. And you're welcome to visit the website or contact us at info@securithings.com.
Yep. I wanted you to spell it because, we pronounce it securithings.com, but especially here in the U.S., we would tend to emphasize that I, secure-e, or securithings.com.
You're absolutely right, Alan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to make sure people get it. Anyway, Roy, congratulations on the round. Keep up the great work. Come back and keep us posted here on what's going on, and we'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Alan. Have a good one.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here live in Detroit at KubeCon Cloud Native Con, continuing our day's coverage at this event. It's pretty crowded. Let me introduce you to Karan Committee from Deep Factor.
Hi everyone.
Karan, welcome.
Yep.
What do you think? It's pretty crowded.
It is super crowded. Much better than last year.
Much.
Yeah.
You don't realize it because the booths are so spread apart.
Yeah.
So it's not as dense.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are here. I'll find out, but there's a lot of people here.
I think our marketing team was telling us that there's 7,000 people here physically and 7,000 online approximately.
Really?
So yeah. It's more than, I think, 3 times the number of physical attendees this time. So.
Than LA.
Yeah.
Last year, yeah. So I'm trying to remember when we were in Valencia in May.
Yeah.
So that was KubeCon Europe.
Right. Yeah.
There was maybe somewhere between 5,000-6,000 people there as well.
Right.
So it's probably around that same size. Still not as big as San Diego was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Getting there.
It's getting there. Come on down. Karan, you're with Deep Factor.
Yes.
And let's start off with a little bit about you. Tell us a little about your story.
Yeah, I'm the founder CEO of Deep Factor, and before Deep Factor, I've been in Silicon Valley for 2 decades now. I've done 3 companies as a founder, sold one to Citrix, sold one to Cisco. My last company was acquired, ContainerX was acquired by Cisco, and I was the head of product for Cisco's cloud after the acquisition, so I was responsible for OpenStack, container networking, Kubernetes, and a few other initiatives there. And it was very clear that the next frontier of innovation has to happen around security in the SDLC, and that's what led me to leave Cisco and start DeepFactor.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think you want to know the truth, from everything I've seen this year, it's reinforced that, right? I think security it's having its moment. I hope it's more than a moment, but it's having, its day in the sun here. Let's talk a little bit about DeepFactor. Let's start basics, right? Well, tell us about DeepFactor.
Yeah, we're a developer security company. Our goal is to make sure that you incorporate security into your software-defined lifecycle, software development lifecycle, so that your engineering teams are empowered to create secure and compliant software just out of habit. Incorporate that in an integrated manner. Yeah, I mean, if you think about the first generation of tooling around developer security, it has been very disjointed. Like you've had SAST and SCA and DAST and runtime analysis and all of that, and they don't necessarily talk to each other. So what we have created is an integrated solution that combines artifact scanning, which is SCA and SBOM, etc., runtime analysis of your Kubernetes environments, and correlation between runtime and artifact scanning, so that you can tell the developers which of the vulnerabilities in your containers are actually used by your application during dev, test, and prod, so that you can prioritize and fix the ones that are important first. So that whole cycle, offered in an integrated manner, is essentially what DeepFactor does.
I love it. Excellent. All right. You know what? Let's get it out of the way so people know right now. For people who want to get more information about DeepFactor, it's deepfactor.io.
Yeah.
Okay. Check that out at deepfactor.io. All right. I think we've laid our foundation. Let's build a little bit.
Right.
As I mentioned, security is top of mind here this year, and I'm happy for it. You guys recently have put out some new news, a new release.
Yes.
And you are, well, I don't want to steal your story. Tell them what's going on, Karen.
Yeah, no, we have launched DeepFactor 3.0, which is an exciting new release with lots of new capabilities that furthers our vision of combining artifact scanning, runtime analysis, and correlation in an integrated solution. And we're also taking signups for our beta for SaaS at the booth. So for those that want to stop by the booth and interested in a SaaS version of our product, they can sign up for the beta.
So you combine two things in there. Let's take them one at a time.
Yeah.
So 3.0 for our users at home.
Right.
Give them the top 2 or 3 things that are in 3.0 that they should care about.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that we're seeing out there is bill of materials and why that's important.
SBOMs.
Yeah, so if you're using DeepFactor 3.0, you can download your SBOM. The SBOM that DeepFactor gives is quite comprehensive and superior to some of the static SBOM tools, in the sense that we not only give you a static list of dependencies and images in your container, we overlay them with vulnerabilities. We group the applications into versions, tag them, based on which components belong to an application, all of that good stuff that needs to happen for you to get a full SBOM, and combine that with how your application is behaving at runtime to give you both static and dynamic bill of materials. That's something that you'll be able to see in 3.0. We've also made a tremendous amount of improvements to our user interface. So the new improved DeepFactor is much more easy to use. We announced a new customer that is a case study of one of our recent customers, Inspied, that is making a geospatial software for car traffic analysis, in Spain, they recently we recently put out a press release with, showcasing the case study of how they have used D-Factor to gain benefit around security in their SDLC pipeline. So,
got it. Excellent. Now, I know enough about S-bombs to be, semi-dangerous. One of the things we're seeing with S-bombs, though, is the different formats that every vendor is using. I believe, I sit in a good seat here. I get to see the whole picture. I think we need to standardize on an S-bomb format.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's efforts underway already with Cyclone DX and SPDX, and both of them are important. I don't know if we'll have one standard, and I think
even two would be nice. Better than 100.
Exactly.
Where is D-Factor on this? What do you support?
Yeah, no, we recognize that both need to be supported, and we'll be supporting, both of them in the coming releases.
Good stuff.
So yeah.
I'd like to hear that. Let's turn now and talk a little bit about a hosted version. Look, I know enough about open source business models.
Right. Yeah.
Right, where training and support isn't enough to make a great business. Yeah. And one of the easiest ways for an open source model is to take that open source supported kind of project, right, and offer it as a hosted version. It's great, but it's not just great for you in this case. It's great for the end user. It takes the infrastructure maintenance off their hands, and make sure that you always have the latest and greatest, version.
Yeah.
You have support really built into it.
Right.
I mean, talk to us about the hosted version. And we should mention, right, I think you did. You're just accepting public beta right now. It's not out for general availability yet.
Yeah, in our booth, people are just scanning to get into our beta
just to get
sign-ups.
in.
Yeah.
But what do you envision is going to be, without getting too much out of the bag?
Yeah, no, I mean, D-Factor is not an open source product.
Right.
We do contribute to open source. We do detect vulnerabilities in open source, all of that. But our product is currently, installed in the customer's environments.
But it run, and I apologize, but that's the model that we see with open source.
Right.
But what you're saying, but it's still, it's running at a customer. They've got to install it, maintain it, update it, support it, level 1 or whatever. So what's in this hosted version, or what that you can talk about? What would, beyond the obvious?
Yeah, no, I mean, all the things that you said, the fundamental difference between, hosting things that customers host themselves versus, any product that is not hosted by the customers as managed by the vendor is the fact that they don't have to deal with all of the headache of the management of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So
now, another advantage, though, of that whole kind of SaaS model is generally, look, traditionally when I buy software, I got to buy the software. I buy a license annually, updates. Maybe I buy the license once, and it's some percentage every year for maintenance and updates. But in a SaaS model, I don't have that big capex, and I do it monthly. Is that the case here, or we haven't worked that out yet?
No, it's always been an annual subscription for us. So we charge based on the number of contributing developers. It's however many developers are contributing to your containers and software. In the last 90 days, those count towards contributing developers for us.
So from a user perspective, price would not be an incentive to go from hosted to on-prem.
No, that's not. But price is a great incentive for users to go from other products to D-Factor because there's, instead of buying 5 different tools, SCA and SBOM and Runtime and DAST and all of that, they could use an integrated solution for getting comprehensive insights into their software-defined lifecycle with prioritization, with the things that developers care about so that it reduces friction for them.
So, offering all of those things, what do you see in the? So SBOM is all the rage now. Everybody's talking SBOMs and software supply chain security and what have you. Yeah, a year ago, everyone was talking about zero trust and all. There's always I own a boat. There's a saying when you own boats. There's always a bigger boat, right? No matter how big your boat is, or how much you like your boat, there's always a bigger boat.
Yeah.
There's always another hot security thing. What do you see in Deep Factor? Does it just keep adding the new hot security things, or is it, hey, this is what we do?
Yeah. No, we are the core strength and power of Deep Factor is in the way we do runtime analysis designed for Kubernetes and cloud-native workloads. So how we drop in to your Kubernetes, you can simply install a webhook, you can configure which pods you want to monitor, and you don't need to install any host-based agents. Unlike the first generation of container security tooling, the approach that we took was we wanted to work in even managed container deployments such as Fargate. So we made that happen. And the way that's the core strength of the product. You simply install the Deep Factor webhook, and the containers that are being observed are deeply inspected. Every process within that container is observed. We take all of that telemetry and do an assessment, detect anomalies, and tell you these are the risks. But that alone doesn't make a complete solution to customers that want comprehensive security into the SDLC. So we've added the artifact scanning to that, which is SCA, and of course bill of materials, because that's an important piece that every customer of ours is asking. We combine that with the runtime analysis. We make runtime analysis so easy that you can now do runtime analysis even in dev, test, not just prod as well. So you can bring that early and shift that left too. And then correlation between runtime and static artifacts, if done in an integrated fashion, gives you the benefit of prioritizing which of the vulnerabilities that you're seeing in your artifact scans show up at runtime in dev, in test, and in prod. Therefore, telling your developers, hey, there are 200 things to worry about, but don't worry, we only noticed 20 things in your runtime, so fix them first. That way developers are happy, and security people are happy that you're prioritizing them the right way.
We were talking off camera before we started running, and we were talking about, things that Deep Factor does and what you're doing with Deep Factor, but also just about, let's call it the primacy of DevSecOps, whatever you want to call it, security. And that is a big issue, right? That we need to make it easier. We can't expect our developers to put the time in security that security pros do. And I think that's part of the Deep Factor value prop.
That's exactly
at the heart.
Deep Factor value.
Yeah. Anyway, we mentioned deepfactor.io.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure we got that. Check it out. When can people sign up on the web for the public beta, maybe, or there's no plan yet?
No, there's no web. I mean,
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
They could come to the booth.
If you're watching this live, you can stop at the booth.
Yes.
But otherwise, you may just have to wait till it's available.
You can stop by the booth. We have a sign-up sheet for beta.
All right. Karan, thank you so much. Deep Factor at deepfactor.io here on KubeCon. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in really less than a minute with our next guest.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here live in Detroit for Cloud Native Con KubeCon. Continuing our coverage, we have a few more interviews today, so stay with us if you can. My next guest is Asanka Abisinga. Asanka is with WSO2.
Yep, Alan.
And happy to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be in your show.
It's our pleasure. So Asanka, before we start about WSO2 and all that, let's hear a little bit about you and what your background is.
Yeah, sure. So I'm coming from application architecture and application engineering background, and so I'm the chief technology evangelist. So telling the WSO2 story, addition to that, providing strategic consulting for some of our key customers as well.
Perfect.
So that's about myself.
Excellent. And let's talk a little bit about WSO2.
Yeah, so we are a technology company coming from open source roots, mainly focusing on 3 areas. API management, integration, identity and access management. Those are the key technology areas.
So and those are 3 very big areas.
Exactly. So we treat them as the foundational technologies you require to build cloud native applications. As I mentioned, like coming from open source, we have the open source offerings. Mm-hmm. So in addition to the open source offering, we introduce our SaaS offering that's called Asgardio and Choreo. So Choreo is mainly focusing on API and integration, while Asgardio is mainly focusing on identity and access management, specifically custom identity and access management side. So that is what we do as WSO2, and we are a global company. So we have offices all around the world, headquartered in US, and we have a large R&D center in Sri Lanka, and then some regional offices in London, Sao Paulo, Sydney, Berlin, so on and so forth.
The usual places, right?
Exactly.
But, all right. So let me just get it straight though. The SaaS offerings, even though they're offered as SaaS, which means they're usually not free, right? People have to pay for that. But they're based on the open source offerings that WSO2 has kind of pioneered, developed, and people can download and run on their own infrastructure.
Yes, exactly. So it is the runtimes of the SaaS offerings coming from the open source side, and then we are utilizing other open source projects as well. As example, both SaaS platforms are built on top of Kubernetes, so we are heavily utilizing Kubernetes there. And then many other open source libraries like Envoy, as an example, utilized inside these SaaS offerings. But the difference is SaaS offerings are platforms. So we have hide the complexity and then bringing more and more user-friendly environment for the application developers, so they can just focus on the application development rather than worried about DevOps, platform engineering, those type of low-level technical stuff. So they can just focus on the application development and use all this open source stuff on top of the platforms that we provide. So addition to the 3 areas that I mentioned earlier, we introduced something called Ballerina, a programming language, a complete programming language, an open source programming language that we are heavily utilizing in our Choreo platform as well. Right. So underneath the building blocks are coming from Choreo, Ballerina, as well as the application development platform coming from Ballerina side as well. So people can write these application development related code using Ballerina as example, microservices, APIs, integrations, those things can be utilized from Ballerina, and that is how the connection between open source and the SaaS coming from these 2 offerings that we offer.
So Ballerina, open source programming language, is it used anywhere besides is it Choreo?
So at WSO2, how we kind of providing access to Ballerina from a platform point of view, it's Choreo. But a bunch of WSO2 users and customers, they are already using Ballerina as a way to do
modern integration, because the way initial integration worked, like how middleware worked, is changing with cloud native concepts. With cloud native concepts, what's really happening, middleware is disappearing into code and infrastructure. So the infrastructure part is very clear because that is Kubernetes. So the code part is not clear. That's why we introduced Ballerina as a way you embedded all the middleware capabilities inside the language. Now the programmer can just focus on the business logic and then build these applications by using Ballerina. So that's where Ballerina.
Now we get it. Okay. Got a lot of different names, projects, offerings. I want to make sure our audience understands. If they want to find out more about WSO2, what's the website for that?
Yeah, so our website is wso2.com. So once you come there, you will see all these products. Since Ballerina is an open source programming language, we have a different website for that. That is ballerina.io. So if you go there, then you will see everything about Ballerina on
Ballerina, BALLERINA.io.
Yes.
Okay. The two SaaS offerings, Curio and
Asgardio.
Do they have their own websites or they're under WSO2.com?
So if you go to dev.choreo.
How do you spell Choreo?
CHOERO, Choreo.
CHOREO. Okay, Choreo.
Yes. Even if you go to WSO2 and then go to the product menu, then you will see as two SaaS offerings, Choreo and Asgardio.
So you can get to them off the main site.
Yeah.
Now, these open source offerings on WSO2, they're not. They support cloud native kind of stuff, but they're not part of CNCF.
No, we have not contributed them to CNCF, but we are using a lot of CNCF components in our product development as well. But we have a close relationship with CNCF on many of these projects, and with our open source principles, we might contribute in the future to CNCF and then kind of as a project. But we are in the process of contributing to existing projects as Envoy and have a better relationship with CNCF as well.
I love it. All right, I think we've got it all. Now we've laid it all out. It all sounds good. Any new news from the show here that you guys are talking about?
Yeah, so we are featuring Choreo, Asgardio, and Ballerina, these three products. So Ballerina, we did a recent release, so that is news. And then there are new features we added to Ballerina coming from the data side. We have a nice data mapper, and then we have a way you can create entities using Ballerina language. Those features are added to the language side. Then Choreo, we did a few new features as well. One thing I mentioned about Ballerina as the programming language, but we can't expect everybody to use Ballerina. So we introduced something called Bring Your Own Container. So you can write these services using any language like Go, Java, Kotlin, all these other languages, and bring your own container inside Choreo, and you can use them inside Choreo runtime. And another thing we introduced from the Choreo side is the DevOps portal. So when you sign up for Choreo and then develop something, we provision all the containers and then use them inside the Choreo platform. But if you want to configure your containers and manage your containers in your own preference, we have the DevOps portal that you can configure those things as well as you can monitor that. So those are a couple of new features that we added to the Choreo side. Then when it comes to Asgardio, so we were mainly focusing on the business to consumer side, B2C customer identity and access management. And we introduced B2B or business to business customer and identity access management with the latest updates that we did. So with that, an organization can have a number of sub-organizations, kind of a nested or a hierarchical way that they can organize these organizations inside the main organization. So that kind of creates new business opportunities for these organizations. As an example, you can manage your suppliers, you can manage your partners within the same identity and access management system. So that's a new feature and a major feature that we added to Asgardio side. And those are the latest updates that we did from the product's point of view.
Excellent. I think we covered it all. I said it's going to be a lot to cover, but we did.
Yep.
Asanka, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. WSO2.com. You can get kind of from there, you can go talk about, see everything we spoke about. We're going to take a break here in Detroit. We have 1 or 2 more interviews, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
Previously on Engineering the Change.
The program at Boca Code was amazing.
My career has completely changed from barely being able to, hold down a job to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Boca Code has built me up.
If you grant me the scholarship, like I said, I will share my knowledge with people, with women or immigrants.
Dreamed of having an opportunity to show the world, how great, I can be.
I feel that anything I do my best in. So wherever I end up, I'm going to do the best I can to make sure I'm making a positive impact. So this scholarship would definitely assist me in changing the trajectory of my life.
To tell Carly about her winning. She is so pumped to really embark on her career as a software engineer. All right, Carly, we got the whole camera crew in there. All right, come on in, guys. We're coming in. Carly, I'm sorry, your name?
Harold.
Harold?
Yes.
So we're making this presentation of $10,000. You got it? Some puppies. Just come right in.
Is this?
For sure. Oh, yeah, the camera.
Huh? What?
Puppies coming over here. Hey, how you doing? Donald, we're here. Hey, man. How are you? I want to present you with this.
Oh, my gosh.
We had a tough time. We couldn't pick the finalists. You guys are all great. You're really great engineers. So you're in.
Oh, my gosh. Awesome. Thank you so much. This is a very awesome opportunity, and I look forward to strive for the best. Awesome. Thank you.
You're going to be a great engineer, man. Thank you so much, Donald. This was by far the strongest class of people we had who applied for the scholarship. We were able to get it down to 3 finalists, but then in meeting with the judges, we couldn't pick a winner. So what we decided to do is just pick all 3 finalists as winners, and so we want to make this contribution to your life. And we're going to award Stephanie Sanchez as one of our 3 Spring 2022 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship. Stephanie, congratulations.
Hey everyone, I'm Alan Schimmel, CEO of Techstrong Group. We are a tech media company based here in Boca Raton, Florida, and we have been for 8 years. I've been a resident of Boca Raton for 20 years now, and it's always been one of my hopes, aspirations, is that South Florida would become a tech hub. So we opened this program, it's called Engineering the Change, to underserved communities including women, people of color, but any underserved community in the tech space, right? When I look back, and we have some of the past winners here with us, and I look at the difference it's made in the community, in their lives, it's something to be really proud of.
So, one of the things that Boca Code really takes is partnerships with companies like Techstrong and other local companies, because we need them to, to help support the school, and we need them to, to hire and interview our students as well.
I'm going to introduce some of our past winners and just have them briefly talk a little bit about, how their life has gone since taking this class.
When I received the scholarship, I had a lot of mixed emotions. I was scared but excited for this new chapter. I had worked in the tech industry, but I had never been in an engineering role. The people at Boca Code, Todd, who I affectionately call Coach, because I kind of think of him as the coach in a game, they guide me step by step, the whole process. When I graduated from the cohort, I had over 10 offers from tier 2 and tier 1 tech companies, and I had my pick, which was the first time in my life I really had to make a choice where it was completely my decision.
The scholarship changed my life really from 0 to 100. As I said before, I was in a state that I was really lost in terms of my career. I had a neuroscience degree from FAU, but I couldn't get a job. Once I got the scholarship and I did the 10 weeks at Boca Code, it completely changed my life to better, because now I have found actually my passion, which is not just tech, but being able to help women get into this field.
Winning the scholarship was once in a lifetime opportunity to change my career. The program at Boca Code was amazing. I studied a lot of fundamentals of software engineering, and I proved myself that I'm capable of being a successful developer. At that time, I couldn't even imagine how I would need this job in 3 months when the war hit my homeland, Ukraine, and this salary of software developer gave me opportunity to help Ukrainian people in this hard time.
So this year, we wound up with 3 finalists for the scholarship, and we brought them into our panel of judges, and each of the finalists were interviewed, and then the judges got together and we had to pick just one. We tried to pick just one, and we really couldn't pick just one. And there were 3 outstanding candidates. And so what we've decided is to give all 3 of them scholarships. First person is Carly Dorless.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So
I'll hold the check for you.
I will do my best to be successful and to help other women and other people.
Our next winner of the Engineering the Change Scholarship for 2022 is a gentleman named Donald Bizio, and Donald will tell you his story. Donald, come on up.
First of all, I want to thank Techstrong, Todd, for introducing me to the scholarship. And, this is an amazing opportunity coming from Haiti. And I hope with this opportunity that Techstrong and Todd introduced me to, I hope to introduce it to others just like myself and give back to my community and show them that, software engineering is cool. It's not just for nerds.
Our third winner for this year's Engineering the Change Scholarship is Stephanie Sanchez.
First of all, thank you both for this opportunity, and congratulations to my fellow recipients. I know we're going to make a significant change in the world. I come from a background of social work, and so I hope to be able to continue to put the people aspect in technology as we help others around us. I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of this. Thank you.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Cody J. Brown here with some programs happening next week at Techstrong Learning. Kicking off Monday, December 5th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. Control Stack has partnered with Techstrong Research for a survey on troubleshooting. Now that we've had some time to review those findings, they're being brought to you during our program, Minimizing the Troubleshooting Tax, 5 Tips to Increase DevOps Productivity. Our speakers aim to highlight how much time is being spent troubleshooting, how to find root causes of production issues, and as the title indicates, present you with some tips for the road. Now, immediately following at 1 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard, join us for a roundtable discussion on application security. Once again, we try to dissect what exactly DevSecOps means. Is it shifting left or just shifting responsibility? As cybersecurity professionals and developers continue with the push and pull of who's the bigger pain in the neck to the other, vulnerabilities are still making it into deployment with not much more than the risk being noted rather than addressed. How can security teams work in better rhythm with developers to sooner address risk in the SDLC? Join our panel of experts for better insight into application security going forward. So that's all I've got for you right now, but we do have an action-packed week here at Techstrong Learning, and we do always have plenty of on-demand programs in our catalog, so feel free to check those out at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section. Have a great Friday and a better weekend, everyone. Hope to see you next week.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Well, the great pleasure of being joined by Martin Mao. Martin is founder and CEO of Chronosphere. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks for having me today, Mitch.
Good to have you here. So we kind of cover the coasts here between you and I.
Exactly.
We're doing pretty good. So before we kind of jump into our topic, I'd love to have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Chronosphere.
Yeah, 100%. So as you said, my name is Martin Mao. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Chronosphere. We provide an observability SaaS platform. So, observability platform is something companies use to gain visibility and insight into the infrastructure, into the applications, and into the business as well. And here at Chronosphere in particular, we target cloud native environments. So companies moving to microservices and containers, pretty popular architecture decision for a lot of companies out there today. So our platform is really optimized for companies adopting this new architecture, as opposed to perhaps, legacy APM tooling and such out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, certainly things have quickly evolved with cloud native and some
100%.
needs, distributed tracing and other great things like that. So
exactly.
But it's interesting times. I came back from KubeCon in Detroit about a few weeks ago, and developer productivity really was not that it's a new topic, but it rose to the surface.
Yeah,
talked to several people about that, and I have to imagine, of course, at least in part, it's driven by economics, but probably also the scarcity of resources too, right? I mean, it's still not easy to hire.
Both of those things.
To hire.
Yeah, both of those things are completely correct and top of mind. I'd also say it's probably pretty correlated, especially you heard it at KubeCon, probably pretty correlated with this adoption of cloud native, because it's not just a technology shift, but generally when you adopt this technology, you adopt more of a DevOps mentality, right? Like the developers are now responsible for not only writing the code, but deploying and running their applications in production as well. So you can imagine it just adds a lot more responsibility onto the developers themselves. They have a lot more things to deal with. And in fact, one of the stats that we were able to gather recently is that on average, a developer probably spends about 10 hours a week, so 25% of their time resolving issues and production issues there. So you can imagine this is just added tax that wasn't on developers before, and just one additional strain on top of everything else that you mentioned earlier. And this is where I think, a lot of the developer tooling and even things like observability come in and help a lot. If we can reduce the amount of time developers are spending with these non-business critical tasks, that actually helps with their productivity, helps reduce the burnout, helps with overall happiness a lot more there.
No, but that 10 hours doesn't happen all in sequence together.
Exactly.
Interrupting development and other tasks.
There may be some times in the middle of the night as well. It's not always during the business hours, you can imagine. So, yeah.
Yeah. Right in the middle of really concentrating on code or watching my
Exactly.
Game of Thrones episode or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Interesting. Well, there's a lot of discussion too about observability in the context of developers and DevOps. And how do you design for observability? How do you, because now we can use open telemetry, we can use products like yours, and think about that, how we instrument our applications as we build them, as we design them. So when we go to find out things about what's happening in production, on native or whatever, we actually have better data, better telemetry about what's happening.
100%. And you're actually spot on there. So one of the great things about cloud native is that there are a lot of open source industry standards now, like OpenTelemetry that you mentioned earlier, Prometheus perhaps on the metric side. So the good thing there is the instrumentation is becoming a lot more standardized, and most companies are producing this data in the same format. Some of the downsides about solving this problem, and it's not a new problem. We've had to monitor and look at our infrastructure and our applications forever. But when you move to cloud native, one of the things that happens is your architecture becomes so much more complex. You're breaking down your monolithic applications to tiny microservices, and so many more of them, and they're all being deployed multiple times a day. So they're all ephemeral as well. So you can imagine, two things really happen. One, because it's so much more complex, it's so much harder to figure out when there's an issue and what is the cause of that issue, because it's just much harder to reason about than ever before. And the second side is, you mentioned this, it actually produces a lot of great data, but there's almost too much data. And your tooling needs not only to be able to scale and handle and store all the data that you are producing, but it also needs to be able to effectively almost, find the insights and find the value out of all the data that you have now. And at the same time, you can imagine more data equals more costs. Doesn't matter if you run it yourself or you pay a vendor. So that's often a problem as well, is that these observability solutions are really rising in how much they are costing companies as well. So these are some of the challenges that I would say companies are running into, especially as they adopt cloud native. And those are actually the challenges we're really trying to resolve here with our platform here at Currency.
It's kind of like, would you like to get more mail? No, I'd like to get more of the right mail, right? That's
exactly.
Just more data. It's not a quantity problem, quality.
Exactly.
I'm curious too, as you think about we're headed into 2023. We don't know what the economic conditions are going to look like. No, none of us do, or we wouldn't be doing this, right?
Yeah.
And so what are some ways that people kind of can hedge their bets thinking about developer productivity? And you'd still benefit from it in good times, but you'd certainly benefit it from maybe some challenging environment.
I mean, 100%. So you can imagine there's a huge focus on efficiency right now, right? And if you think about developer productivity, in the stat that we referenced earlier, a quarter of your developers' time is spent not adding direct business value, right? So that's efficiency you can gain there by giving them more effective and better tooling. You can also imagine there are probably some harder to measure longer term benefits of having a much more happier workforce, less churn, less turnover, less time to ramp. So I'm sure there's a lot of benefits from that perspective here as well. But even outside of that, you can imagine a lot about developer tooling, especially in the observability space, is to ensure that our products and services are a lot more reliable as well. And that's pretty key in this time period as well, because as times get tougher, you definitely want to make sure you don't lose any customers, and you want to give the best service or the best possible version of your service, your product out there for your existing customers, right? So you can imagine for us here at Chronosphere, some of the companies we work with are folks like Robinhood, the trading platform, or DoorDash, the food delivery platform. You can imagine in both of those, they're using observability to ensure that their services are more reliable, that people can, and users can make trades, or they can successfully get their food delivered. And in times like this, you really want to retain as many of your customers as possible. And having a more reliable platform and robust platform goes a long way to doing that. You can imagine observability is one example of a developer tool, but observability is a huge piece and a critical piece to measure when anything goes wrong, tells you about why that issue occurred, and essentially help you get the system back in running order as quickly as possible.
If anything, during tougher times, customers are even more discerning than they might normally be, right? Is it worth it to pay that fee for whatever I bought online?
Exactly. It's that. Also, you can imagine increased competition. It's so much easier for alternate platforms to try to come take your customers as well. So it's just generally a more competitive space right now, and I think actually observability has a pretty good role to play there as well, along with other developer tooling as well.
If you had to kind of dust off the crystal ball a little bit and think about observability and where it's headed, and there's certainly a lot of work in open telemetry, and there's distributed tracing and those areas. Are there any things kind of you see on the horizon of where observability is going to go over the next year plus?
Yeah, we and myself here and us at Chronosphere, we have a pretty good view of, I would say, where the industry may be going in terms of what may be needed, just because we talk to a lot of companies out there. Of course, there's a slightly biased view because this is just how we see the view and we build a product towards it. But, in the latest release of our product, there's a couple of things that we're doing to solve both the problem to make the tooling more effective at finding issues, as well as helping solve that data growth problem that I was talking about, right? So on the first hand side, what we're seeing is that as I mentioned, there's so much data right now, there's so much complexity. What we're finding is that if you just present all of that data to the typical developer, it's too much. They have no idea what to do with it. So one of the more recent features we released is called collections. And what that does is when you come into the platform, we scope you down to what we know you care about. Generally, a developer doesn't own the whole system. They own one particular piece. That particular piece has upstream or downstream dependencies, and we know about all of that. So when you log in, you can imagine we want to present you with just the relevant data to you and cut out all of the other noise there, right? That is one thing that we're trying to do to help a developer figure out these issues faster. Another thing we're doing on that side is a feature called trace-derived metrics, and it sounds like a very technical feature, but essentially it's using distributed tracing to help you root cause an issue. And generally, when you root cause it for the first time, there's a lot of discovery, there's a lot of understanding what the system does. But once you do that discovery and you're like, okay, well, in the future, I will know that this issue happens if I see so many requests here and they're returning errors here and I'm getting high latencies here. That really complex analysis you're doing, we're trying to capture that, thus that if it happens again, instantly. You don't have to go through the path again of discovering this is what is causing the issue. You can automatically turn that into a metric and get alerted off of it straight away. So next time, instantly the same thing happens, it's happening, exactly what the cause is and how to go remediate. So those are some of the things we're doing on the end user side to make that experience better. On the other side of things, you can imagine just to deal with the constant data growth, there's a couple of things we're doing on that front. The first one is what we're realizing is that there's a lot of data being produced, and it's not that it's not all used. That's a common misconception that we find is do I actually use all of this data? It's actually interesting. You use the data, but not in the raw form that it's produced in. So you produce a ton of raw data, and generally when you're trying to look for something, you're looking for an outlier, or you're looking for the sum or the P99 or those things. And those signals you're looking for, you can imagine, is calculated from all the raw data that gets produced. So one of the things our platform does is it goes and figures out all the signals and the insights that you want to get. And then it figures out how to turn the raw data into those insights and only store the insights as opposed to all the raw data. So you can imagine you're storing far less data and it's becoming far more cost efficient. However, you're getting all the value, all the insights that you were getting before. And we've had this capability for a while on our platform, but we realized that manually doing this process is sometimes cumbersome. So we're automating all of that for our customers now more than anything else. That's another piece there. And then the last one is just about more quotas and especially as we're going into this particular economy, we're really mindful about how much resources we spend, even in developer tooling, how much resources we spend there. So one of the features we released there is quotas, where each team or each business unit can control the amount of observability resources that they are using. And when they run into limits, they don't just have to pay more. You can actually do other things with that data. So you can start to make some decisions of like, if I'm producing too much, how do I make some trade-offs here? Do I store subsets of the data for a shorter period? Do I sample more particular places and whatnot? So we're helping folks control the growth of the cost, control the cost of the platform by giving them more fine-grained control on how and on what they want to do with their data. Sorry, I dumped a ton of stuff there, but just some things we do on the platform on both sides. And to us, it's both, can we make the tool a lot more effective for the end users? And how do we do it in a way that's cost efficient for companies? Because there is a ton more data being produced.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like setting up your development environment. You kind of get everything arranged, your windows, the way the tools that you like to have set up, things plug into your IDE. Kind of sounds like a similar sort of process. Like, here's the part of the system that you care about. We know that this is
and everyone's setup is different. Even though we use the same tool, everyone's setup is different, right? So when you come in, you want something familiar to you. We know exactly what you're looking for, how you want to go about the problem. That's a great analogy there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. Well, and again, more productivity, if you're helping get right to the problem, maybe helping with, using some of that data they might have to go through, do that themselves and presenting it to them automatically. It sounds like great stuff. Well, good. I think whatever the economic conditions are, it's exciting times to be part of cloud native and observability and digital experiences and the future that we're all creating together. So it's a pleasure to do that with you and the team from Chronosphere. Appreciate you coming to talk with us today. Where can folks find out more? What's the best place to check?
Yeah, the best place is probably our website, chronosphere.io. We have a blog there. We can learn a lot more. There's more information about the product. There's more information about just the general problems, I would say, that everybody runs across as you adopt cloud native there. So chronosphere.io is the best place for that. And yeah, Mitch, thanks for having me here today.
You bet. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I look forward to next time we can get together.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Matt Richards, who's the Chief Marketing Officer for Aqua Security. We're going to be talking about eBPF and the impact it's going to have on security, and then in general, what's going on in the overall marketplace. Hey Matt, welcome to the show.
Thrilled to be here, Mike.
So you guys are one of the earliest people that I've seen so far who's kind of tapping into this new microkernel architecture that's available in Linux for running a whole bunch of things faster. But why don't you walk us through exactly what you guys are up to and what the implications are for security folks?
Happy to. Let's just at a high level, if you say, what does Aqua do? We like to say we stop cloud native attacks. In other words, we're stopping attacks on your cloud native applications. Prevention, right, before production, of course, and then also as attacks happen in production. And to do that, you have to have as non-intrusive a way as possible, but still be in the container to block attacks in real time in production. And so to do that, we leverage this eBPF framework. And essentially, what we're doing is we're tapping into another way to think about it as a probe into the kernel in modern Linux distributions that give us visibility without dropping our own code into the kernel, right? So this is essentially a feature of modern Linux distributions, this eBPF probe. And it's essentially a hook where you can insert code to do things in a faster, more efficient manner than you would otherwise have done in the past, where you had to insert your own code to get that same level of visibility at the kernel. And so what we do with that is like you can see what's going on. We can talk about our research team a little bit later, but we've created a whole range. It's over 200 definitions of behavioral indicators of attack. Not signatures, right? But behavioral indicators of, say, what goes on in a rootkit exploit. So we can actually identify that a rootkit has been installed and is intercepting calls to list directories, for example, and try to keep itself hidden. And by understanding that behavior is happening through the eBPF probes, we can identify and block the rootkit attack in real time.
And
this
is important because it seems like as people deploy more and more containers, the existing platforms are struggling with the volume and keeping pace with all of that. So is this going to be critical for just securing cloud native environments at scale?
100%. What's happening is you're seeing two elements in the market today, right? There's the see it, which is a necessary first step, and then there's the stop it, which is the second step. And eBPF gives you a very interesting way today to see it. And then to stop it, right? That's when we have to, we actually deploy some of our proprietary capabilities there to actually stop those attacks in real time in production. And then to do that at scale, you need most accurate, lowest impact on any given container, right? Because the overhead can start to chew up excess capacity in your cloud. So as you think about automated detection, this is the scale element. Identifying behaviors and achieving 90, let's call it 80% coverage out of the box. We just released our Lightning Enforcer last week, and it's leveraging the eBPF framework. And that's exactly the intent, is to make it super fast and easy to deploy and get good coverage out of the box with no customization. And that's what the behavioral detection can give us. And you can get that deployed very quickly into production with very low risk and be protected. Kind of sounds too good to be true, right? Because normally it's the other way around.
Do you think that people are appreciating the nuances of cloud native security? Some people would argue that these applications are more secure than monolithic. Other people say they're more complex and more challenging to secure. Either way, it seems like it's fundamentally different. And are people wrapping their minds around exactly what is different about cloud native security?
It's very different. And I think if you go back to the days when I started coding in Java and C, it was a monolithic, slow waterfall development process, months between releases. And now we're talking minutes between releases. There are banks that refresh their entire infrastructure every day by just reloading everything from their repositories to ensure that there's no malicious code installed. We have multiple pipelines where maybe we had a dozen. There's 10x that number of pipelines today. Microservices being deployed that are then leveraged and knitted into applications. Open source is now very common, and of course, it's also a very good supply chain attack, software supply chain attack. So you need to understand the whole scope of a cloud native application. What is a cloud native application? Containers, Kubernetes, Lambda, Fargate, hosted containers, OpenShift, right? That's a cloud native application, is an application built to take advantage of all of those new containerized capabilities, right? So that's part one. Is that different? Radically. You have developers defining the infrastructure in code in development that would get deployed at runtime. That's never happened before. So you no longer have to plug and play firewalls the way you used to have to. Right now, you're actually deploying code and defining in software like your network segmentation. So you can catch the errors earlier in code if you're watching. So that's why when you think about cloud native security, why is it different? Because you need to think about the entire scope from code all the way through to production, from the infrastructure through the process to the actual code itself. And you need to secure all of that. And that's what we do at Aqua. And that's what Gartner calls a CNAPP, or a cloud native application protection platform.
Who's responsible for all this these days? And I'm asking the question because historically, the security people tended to view this as a application security issue that developers were supposed to fix. Developers thought the security guys were fixing it, and nobody did anything in the middle. So the question I'm having is that changing? Are we starting to see a greater appreciation for cloud native application security, and who's leading the charge?
100% seeing a change in who owns it. Obviously, DevSecOps and that move starts to bring all of these pieces together. But even for folks who aren't quite ready to make that transition, we're starting to see the security organization responsible for the result. And that was even true. It was even true before, but it was a lot easier when it came to cloud native. It just wasn't deployed as far. So it was a lot easier to think, okay, cloud native is really for development, it's for testing, but we're not going to be in production. Well, now we're in production. We believe that 95% of all new applications are going to be built using cloud native tech in the next 2 or 3 years. And that's basically all of the new stuff. And in that world, and it's the deployments are happening faster, they're getting into production faster. In that world, we're starting to see the CISOs and the security organizations having to be responsible. When you think about, but having to be responsibly responsible, right? Because if you put a gate or a circuit breaker in a development pipeline to keep out a vulnerability like the latest OpenSSL 3 or Log4j, and you block that from production, you've now blocked the work of a development team, which could be quite large, right? So it can no longer be in isolation. And what's happening is as folks embrace cloud native, security is becoming part of the story, right? It's becoming an integrated DevSecOps capability. And a lot of folks come back to us after deploying what we do, and they say, look, you helped us get to DevSecOps because you gave us a single source of truth in one platform across the entire process, which helps us speak the same language, helps us understand the nature of our vulnerabilities, keep them out of production, 0 days in production, and the fixes back through the CI/CD pipeline back into code.
Is that starting to happen where we're starting to see the security platform that's used on the pre-production side is essentially the same as it is in the production side to facilitate those workflows? And is this also part of some larger consolidation effort we're starting to see in the market?
I think that last part also comes to with some of the economics that we're seeing in the market out there today. We're seeing a push towards that very same consolidation. Why? Well, cost savings. Why have 5 scanners across the life cycle of an application when you could have 1? Right. So why? Not only does it introduce 5 different answers in the arguments, right, but it's also the cost of maintaining the 5 different vulnerabilities and vulnerability scanners and image scanners, and that's different from a runtime snapshot scanner, which is different from the agents that are actually protecting it in real time. No, it should just be. And what we're seeing is that the interest in from dev all the way through to production, that single answer, one source of truth, a scanner that can see and understand what's going on in infrastructure as code, in your cloud service accounts, in your images, in your artifact repositories, in running images. It's all the same scanner. And we're starting to see that consolidation. And that's the direction we've been heading, actually, as well. But we're seeing security organizations, dev organizations coming together and trying, particularly in this economic circumstance, trying to solve it with one tool rather than several.
You guys put together a $1 million warranty last summer. That's kind of brave in this world that we live in. So what exactly are the details of that, and what are how would anybody actually tap into that if the situation ever arose?
So it's we put it together last summer. We launched it out. We were the first in the cloud native world to offer and really stand behind the product. And we don't know a better way to say, look, we guarantee this with a warranty. You will be protected in production. And so essentially we're looking at, if you're in production, fully deployed, and managed, right? You need to make sure you have the latest vulnerability databases, and right, so to best practice management of the platform. If you're attacked successfully, we agree, then yeah, we warranty that, and we will up to $1 million based on the number of containers and the size of the impact, up to $1 million on it. And what we've seen is interest, a lot of interest around standing behind the product with a full warranty. And that's not something we see in this space before. And there's a couple of reasons why we believe we can do it. And it's built on our open source, right? We have the world's best open source scanner. It's called Trivy and Aqua Trivy. And it is the number one most popular scanner in the cloud native chain, all the way from code to production. So that's one piece there. Hundreds of thousands of users every day, hundreds of millions of downloads. And the other reason is some of the behavioral research in the team Nautilus I alluded to earlier. But here's a team that's sole job is researching Linux-based cloud-native attacks. And what we found, there's a lot of really interesting stuff we found in there, but suffice it to say, that's what's standing behind the warranty. And that's why we know that's why we make that guarantee.
So what's your best advice to folks about how to achieve this convergence of developers and security folks? Do I just throw them all in a room and lock the door till somebody comes out with a rational answer? Or is there some other set of best practices you're starting to see people employ?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two paths, as you say, throw them in a room, or the more measured path, which is, look, see it first. So for me, and when we talk to customers and with what they're doing, generally speaking, there's the see it first, but see it across the entire lifecycle, from code all the way through to production. See your environment. And one of the biggest questions, how many containers are you running? And the answer can often be, I'm not sure. Which is why, and where are they running? I'm not sure. Which is the basis for solving that problem is where this end-to-end code all the way through production scanning comes from. So the first advice is see it, but see it with the same tool and the same eyes across the entire lifecycle, so that you can identify the compound risks across the lifecycle, right? So it's one thing to have Log4j in production, but if that application has no internet access, like how big a vulnerability is that? Versus, right, clearly it's a vulnerability, but how big a risk and how big a priority is it? Versus a production running workload with malware that's accessing the internet, like that's a whole different animal. And so you need to see that compound risk across the entire life cycle. So that's step one. And then step two is when you're comfortable and you understand it, is now let's try to, because that step one is where you're going to get your dev working with security, working with ops together, speaking the same language. And then once you're there, then let's work on stopping it pre-production, with stage gates or circuit breakers, if you will, in the release process, so that you're identifying and keeping known bad out of production. And then let's do real-time protection in production. And it's step one, see it. Step two, supply chain. Step three, runtime.
All right, folks, as always, if you can't see it, you can't secure it. The trouble is with those pesky little containers is they're only around for a couple of seconds, but you'd be amazed at how much damage can be done in a few seconds. Hey, Matt, thanks for being on the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Mike.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Andre Christ, who's CEO for LeanIX, and we're going to be talking about the role enterprise architects should be thinking about playing to help contain costs, which are, as we all know, we're all a little bit more sensitive about that these days, but we've kind of allowed them to spiral out of control for a wide variety of reasons that we're about to jump into. Andre, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation. A pleasure to be here.
We have been consuming resources in the cloud with abandon over the years. We always gave developers free reign. And now it seems like we're talking about FinOps, and there's this whole effort to, shall we say, inject a little more adult supervision into how these resources are consumed. What is the role of enterprise architects, and what kinds of processes should people be looking at putting in place? Because for a while there, it was just, well, it was easy to spin up resources and nobody ever looked at the bill, and now they are.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of the companies have decided on a cloud first or migration to the cloud. And as you described, it was probably all in moving applications over. And the priority was like adopting it as fast as possible. And it was not really thought about much. Is it really optimized for the cloud? And unlike some of the cloud native born companies who have actually optimized their application natively for the cloud, many corporations and enterprises were more busy with demonstrating their shifting or lifting and shifting their workloads into the cloud. And what is the result of that? Well, you're moving an inefficiently running application on a server into, like, it's going to still run inefficiently in the cloud and consume a lot of the resources and energy. So unless you optimize it, it's not going to be really great in the cloud. And this is where enterprise architects can come in and help to understand, looking entirely on the portfolio. So before you move just stuff into the cloud in a lift and shift, understand what should you actually re-architect, what can you actually retire even before you move it into cloud, or where do you go and shifting over to a software as a service, so repurchasing instead of actually re-hosting or re-platforming.
Seems like a lot of people are caught up as to where and when to do that. Some folks are saying you should do that before you move. Other people tell themselves that they'll move the app and then they'll start refactoring into a bunch of microservices over time. Is there a pattern? Is there a better way to go? Or is it up to each individual organization depending on whatever deadlines they got to face?
Yeah, I believe that it's, in general, there's great systematic approaches around. One of those is leveraging the AWS 6R method to systematically assess the portfolio. So going through some of the R's, it's rehosting, replatforming, re-architecting, retiring, repurchasing, or even retain what you have and keep it in the data center, how you're running it. So I think that is, first of all, a method which is helpful just to avoid your just doing busy work and moving things into the cloud. On the timing, so do you optimize first and then move, or do you move and then optimize? Well, I think it depends a bit what you want to achieve. If there's the need for the business for scalability, of course, you can go in certain areas and say, like, okay, I'm accepting inefficiencies because I'm gaining scale. But I would argue that this is a business benefit then. So if you identify there's a benefit for your consumers or for your employees to have something in the cloud, where you can probably compromise a bit on inefficiency. However, if there's just a technical aspiration, we're going to move it one-to-one into the cloud to check mark it off, I would argue you're much better off systematically assessing it first and then moving into a better option, because in many cases, you can actually save 10 to 20% of the migration effort by just sunsetting what is anyhow not needed. So you can focus your energy around selecting better solutions or optimizing for the cloud in the first place. So if there's immediate business benefits, I would opt for accepting the inefficiencies. If it's not, I would systematically assess the portfolio ahead of it.
One of the benefits of cloud native is it allows you to scale up resources up and down more dynamically than you can with a monolithic application. Do you think as we become more cost sensitive that we'll see folks accelerate the transition to cloud native, where they're using Kubernetes and some of these more advanced technologies to kind of contain those costs?
Of course, I think it's the beauty about some of the now diversified services, where we're not talking just about a virtual machine, which is in the cloud, which is probably now more and more understood as well. This is the last resort of running stuff in the cloud. The more intelligent things are, can I leverage a managed service? Can I use a managed database, which is optimized by one of the hyperscalers for specific usage? Or do I use functions in the cloud, or Kubernetes as a platform to spin up things and to scale up nodes as you need it. So I think if you look at DevOps teams right now, they have a variety of options at hand. And this is, I'm just talking about compute now. If you look at storage, it's similar. I mean, you can go from like SSD storage for workloads which need to be accessed fast to completely different block storage when it's not needed to access it on a short latency time. And I think what comes in again is the understanding of what are the options you have, and what are, from an architecture perspective, where are you going? And I think what we will see is there's going to be another dimensions in the years to come, which is the whole discussion about sustainability. It will be the question, does it make sense to consume resources or consume storage which is not optimized for the workload? And I can already see the demand of business leaders increasing to understand what's actually my sustainability footprint, because as we know by now, the energy consumption by all the data centers around the world is becoming more than all the flights we are doing around the world. So it's becoming a significant portion of energy consumption.
Do you think DevOps teams are prepared today to manage all these different kinds of applications that they're going to be running? Because they'll have the legacy monolithic ones, they'll have the cloud native ones that are running on Kubernetes, and then they'll have extensions to those running on serverless computing frameworks. So are things getting more complicated than we can handle?
Yeah, I think they're becoming incredibly complicated because there's increasing tool chains. The abstraction layer has become so much better, right? So it's no longer that you have to manually deploy something to the cloud. You use technologies like Terraform and the like to actually abstract it, and then you can deploy into different targets, which is great. It makes you independent, but it also increases the requirements on what teams need to understand to do it. And I think you touched a bit on the whole space of FinOps before, which is a whole, you could probably argue, science or category to understand what's actually a way to cost efficiently run like workloads in the cloud and demonstrate the cost footprint of it. And I think what we are seeing right now, we see a trend that if you look at the whole value stream of creating a digital solution, starting with the requirement in the beginning, and then with monitoring the performance and the customer satisfaction, like in the end of this, then there's a lot of tools involved. Yeah. So there's tools where you gather requirements. There's tools where you gather NPS feedback, so the Net Promoter Score. There's support tickets. There's deployment platforms, performance management, and it's difficult for product teams to keep a consistent overview of this. So this is why we're seeing a bit this discipline of value stream management emerging, where product teams get a bit of a single pane of glass where they can see their services, they can understand in one area, like how often are they deploying, how well are their services set up, what dependencies does it have, and then from there jump into the more detailed tools. So yes, I see it's becoming on the one hand more complex, but on the other hand, it's a great opportunity to leverage this foundation of tooling we have. But I think you need to wisely pull it together and leverage that tool chain well. Otherwise, you're wasting a lot of time.
Do you think this will force us down the path towards higher levels of automation, whether it's AI or whatever it may be? But it seems like we're reaching a point where it's too complex for mere mortals to manage themselves. So how augmented can we help these folks get?
Well, I mean, I'm all for the part of automation in here. I'm still skeptical to what degree AI and those technologies will actually be helpful to do that. I'm equally skeptical on the contribution on the code development side. Honestly, I think there's a good opportunity for assistance and and helping to with pattern recognition, helping teams to identify security issues or typical flaws in it while coding. I still see there's so much potential for getting a better visibility on the data instead of getting lost in AI or ML conversations. So visibility and having good analytics in place and connecting the data. This is what we at least see in many of our customer situations where there's like different data sources and people waste time linking those together. So you have like your stories in Jira and your epics, and then in like another solution, you have actually the understanding about what services you're running. And in the next, you get a feedback by customers on their priorities. And so it's that wastes time. So I think until reaching the point where we can actually really get to leverage from like machine learning and AI, I would argue there's a lot more efficiency and automation gains to be captured by getting the foundation right. So that's my personal view.
So what's your advice to folks when the CFO shows up and just randomly says we're going to cut spending by, I don't know, 20% because CFOs will manage with blunt instruments? And yet I am trying to maintain agility and reliability, and a lot of reliability sometimes is tied to over provisioning. So how do I kind of balance these three things now where I'm trying to rein in cost and maintain agility and reliability?
Yeah, I mean, to go even further, we in the last couple of days witnessed that even CEOs start now to ask the product teams to shut down microservices. So I think we're getting in times to a point where it's important to continue working in a data-driven way. So that's why, I mean, you can't actually go into landscapes and shut stuff off. I think the first step is having a good baseline in place that you understand what is a certain service contributing to, what is like the business impact of it, what is the gain. So if I shut down a service or if I optimize a service, and all in all, this requires to stay data-driven. So the requirement towards the product teams will be that they have good instrumentation in place, which they shouldn't build on their own. So I consider this to become really a commodity thing, because we have to make sure as product teams that we're not starting now to engineer our platform. So in the early days, people have invested time in building their observability or application performance monitoring tools until like great companies emerged like Datadog or others. Now we shouldn't now waste time and start building tooling for understanding what services we're running. And I think this is where vendors can come in and help those companies avoid that their product teams get busy with like too much of that automation. I think this is always like a pendulum, right? So until there's great solutions around, you actually optimize yourself. But my advice to engineering leaders or technology leaders is to actually continuously observe and see what are the capabilities really where which you want to invest in and where you need to develop stuff versus where you can where you can actually like use commodity solutions on the market. And so again, something like value stream management becomes more and more an established topic, and therefore helps organizations to avoid that they spend their important resources on building internal tooling.
All right. Well, it's always tempting for folks to do it themselves, but the reality is it's probably better to use tools that are created by somebody else as times get more challenging. Hey, Andre, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. Back to you guys in the studio.
Do you know what you want?
Can we afford this place?
I'm thinking 1,000-piece Kubernetes, cloud workload protection, and XDR combo.
Yeah, I actually don't see any prices.
Hello, how can I schedule a demo for you today?
So we're on a budget. Okay. How much is your 1,000-piece Kubernetes?
What solutions are you currently evaluating?
You don't have to order off that thing.
We don't?
How did you get in here? Check this out.
Uptick secret dollar menu.
Order today and you can secure any combo of cloud and endpoint assets through the end of next year. All for $1.
What if I want to secure 100 Mac laptops and 900 Linux servers?
Yeah. $1. What if I want 500 laptops and 500 Kubernetes nodes? Just $1? Yep. Mix and match to create the combo that works for you.
What about customer support?
Yep. Everything for just $1. We're going to order off the Uptick secret dollar menu. And seriously, how did you get in here?
Seriously.
Try the Uptick's combo of CNAP and XDR, delivered in a single UI and data model. Just $1 to secure your cloud, containers, and laptops through the end of next year. Offer ends December 31st.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had an amazing set of interviews with industry professionals to give you the inside scoop into the tech world. We'll be back again on Monday, so we hope to see you then. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.